The Doll Maker. One Halloween, something happened that made me swear off trick-or-treating. I was just 10 at the time, and I'd been out scoring candy with a neighborhood friend. But about halfway through the night, my friend started feeling sick, probably from the sugar overload. He had to bail and go home, leaving me to fend for myself. I soldiered on, hitting a few more houses on my way before I saw a gray car parked in the street that I'd seen earlier in the night. At that time, I hadn't thought anything of it, since some parents watch their kids from a distance. Back home, I was excited to see my candy stash, so I dumped it all on my bed. That's when I noticed something strange lurking in my bag. It was a doll. It looked homemade, of cloth and yarn. It had brown hair like mine and was dressed in the same costume I'd been wearing all night. But that wasn't the worst part. There was a thick nail driven straight through its head, the jagged point protruding through the back of the doll's head. Around its neck hung a small card with my full name, my address, and date of birth. Beneath that, the message, "See you later." I dropped the thing like it was possessed. It felt very wrong, and I didn't even want to look at it. The thought that someone took the time to make the doll and then slip it into my bag was nauseating. I tried thinking of all the people I'd received candy from, but nothing had seemed out of sorts. Nobody stood out to me. But I also hadn't been thinking about much besides getting candy. There weren't any other kids in my neighborhood, and the doll felt more malicious than a stupid prank. I told my parents, and they immediately called the police. As the officers took the doll away for evidence, they warned my parents to be extra cautious and to keep the house locked. I noticed the gray car from Halloween night parked across from our house the next day, and when I told my parents, my dad started leaving work early to pick me up from school so I wouldn't be alone in the house. We didn't see the gray car again. To this day, I have no idea who put that creepy doll in my bag, or why. My friend didn't get anything remotely like it, and we had been snacking from our bags all night, so I suspect it came from one of the houses I'd visited after he'd gone home. What still bothers me is how the doll's costume matched mine, and how whoever sent it knew my personal details and where I lived. The doll maker must have been watching me that night, or maybe even longer. And that thought still gives me nightmares. The Follower. The year I turned 10 and my brother hit 12 was a milestone for us. It was the first time our parents let us go trick-or-treating alone. Our parents set our curfew at 9, and we made a plan to get as much candy as possible. On Halloween night, we raced from house to house in our neighborhood, cramming our bags with sweets as fast as we could. We had almost an hour left before curfew, but the only houses left were in the next neighborhood over. But to make it back in time, my brother decided we should take the shortcut through the woods. A walking path some kids took between neighborhoods. Our parents said the trail was off limits. It was just wild brush, not a clear path, and even worse, it butted against the main interstate on the other side. There was even a rumor about wild hogs in these woods. Taking the long way around would mean being late for curfew, so we ducked into the trees before realizing our glow sticks weren't enough light in that dark brush. We talked loudly about our candy haul while crunching twigs and dead leaves underfoot, pushing branches and brush out of our way until it got more tangled, and we had to slow down to focus. In the quiet, we heard crunching footsteps behind us. We stopped and turned around, trying to see who it was, but it was too dark. Whoever was in the woods with us also stopped. I remember how fast the feeling of excitement over candy shifted to fear as we stood looking into the trees. My brother called out, hoping it was just some kids from our neighborhood using the same shortcut, but no one answered. For a few seconds, only the dying leaves were moving, rustling with the wind. My brother turned back towards the path, and as he did, a tall shape moved in the darkness behind us. It was no kid. I pushed my brother forward, and we picked up the pace. Whoever was tailing us did the same. As they gained on us, we started sprinting through the trees, stumbling through the brush, and the tree branches stung our faces as we ran. The follower kept up with us easily, moving in complete darkness, without a single light. When we finally burst out of the woods at the end of the path and into the well-lit cul-de-sac, we were out of breath and our hearts were pounding. We turned to see if we were still being followed. At the edge of the trees, in the shadows, stood a man in a flannel shirt and a baseball hat. I couldn't make out any more details, his face or his legs, just that he watched us leave, and then disappeared back into the dark. I don't know if he was just trying to scare us because it was Halloween, or if he had something far worse in mind. My dog. Back in the days when creepy clowns were making headlines, I never thought I'd have my own terrifying encounter with one. It all went down just 2 nights before Halloween during a routine trip outside for my dog's last potty break of the night. Now, my dog isn't the type to take things lightly. She's serious and quick to react if something doesn't sit right with her. So when she suddenly erupted into a frenzied rage of barking and growling, I instinctively turned around, ready to apologize and move away from whoever had set her off. But when I spun around, my heart stopped. There, right behind me, stood a man dressed like a clown, lurking just on the other side of dumpster I'd just walked past moments ago. Either I'd been completely oblivious to him, or he'd silently crept closer behind us. Either way, my dog was having none of it. She was barking and lunging toward the clown in a way I'd never seen her do before. She was clearly picking up on my terror, and maybe his bad intentions, as I stared at his horrible painted face just a stone's throw away from us. Without a second thought, I turned and ran, my pup staying close, but still barking and growling. All I wanted was to put as much distance as I could between us and that clown. What unnerved me the most was the clown's complete stillness. If his intention was to simply scare us, you'd think he'd have the sense to back off when faced with a triggered dog. As I sprinted away, my heart pounding in my chest, I saw a second clown across the dark street. This one was taller, leaning towards me into the street, and had my dog not been going ballistic, I'm convinced he would have advanced closer. This dark street that was bustling during the day was empty now, except for me and these 2 terrifying clowns. I didn't stop to see if they were behind me. I kept sprinting until I reached the brightly lit doors of a 7-Eleven just a few blocks away. From inside the store, I finally turned to see if they were behind me. But the street was empty again. I wasn't about to walk home in the direction of those clowns, so I called an Uber. I asked the driver to circle the block a few times before dropping me off at my building because heading straight home seemed too risky if those clowns were watching. I cooked a salmon dinner for my dog that Halloween night. I've never been more thankful for her reactivity.